Due to some recent revelations by Inside Climate News, the world found out about ExxonMobil's big dirty secret. You see, some of its own research firms in the late 1970s warned ExxonMobil and its executives that its products would be destructive to the environment and worsen climate change. So, our good friends at 350.org decided to hold a people's tribunal, and big climate activists like Naomi Klein and Bill McKibben were part of the prosecution. I guess it's time for some justice.
Your Honors, we rise today to present this case against Exxon. As some of you may know, these revelations began to emerge 8 weeks ago in the American press. A series of reports from Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists beginning to document the fact that ExxonMobil scientists as early as the 1970s had understood and calculated with great precision what would happen as their product was consumed around the planet. They knew, according to these documents, how much the planet would warm. Indeed, they used those calculations to help prepare bids for new leases in parts of the newly melting Arctic. Despite that knowledge, ExxonMobil, largest corporation in the world for many of those years, most profitable corporation in the world for many of those years, despite their foreknowledge, Exxon continued to, and in fact, built a vast architecture of denial and deception and disinformation.
Not only did ExxonMobil know the effects that their product would have on climate change, they also sought out corporations and lobby groups responsible for spreading disinformation on the use of tobacco and used those people to create propaganda like this and become merchants of doubt.
There's something in these pictures you can't see. It's essential to life. We breathe it out. Plants breathe it in. It comes from animal life, the oceans, the earth, and the fuels we find in it. It's called carbon dioxide, CO2. The fuels that produce CO2 have freed us from a world of back-breaking labor, lighting up our lives, allowing us to create and move the things we need, the people we love. Now some politicians want to label carbon dioxide a pollutant. Imagine if they succeed. What would our lives be like then? Carbon dioxide. They call it pollution. We call it life.
In 2005, they made a video called CO2, We Call It Life. And this is one of the lines that these climate deniers run, is that they say that we need CO2, we need it to breathe. And this is, that it's good for plant growth, that, all these, I'm not going to go into all their arguments, but the CEI was really at the heart of early Exxon denial and helped set up the network that we still see today.
Is this part of the campaign of spreading doubt?
Absolutely, that's all they do. Doubt is their product. And
The prosecution called for 11 witnesses to share their story about how the disinformation, the deceit, and the lack of action from ExxonMobil caused sufferance around the whole world.
Today, if you walk on the beaches in Prince William Sound, you lift a rock in certain areas, there's still oil. And it's still fresh, and it still smells as if it was spilled yesterday. It hasn't been cleaned up.
Within a few miles from the Exxon refinery in Baton Rouge, and in that area around there, we have kids with heightened rates of leukemia, asthma, all kinds of stuff. You can see that from the Capitol. You can see the Exxon refinery, which, by the way, emits half of all the VOCs, volatile organic compounds that cause cancers. Half for the entire state of Louisiana comes from the Exxon refinery in Baton Rouge.
We're living in a lot of fear. We're living in a lot of fear that we would prefer to push back and not necessarily think about on a daily basis. I myself have confronted that fear, that we could be losing our livelihoods, we could lose our land, we could lose our culture. And that kind of fear is haunting because, if we lose our land, we lose our identity, we lose who we are as a people.
Where would people go?
We don't know. We don't know where we would go.
The air quality is right now in a situation in the city where I live, Delhi, where it competes very regularly with Beijing to be called the most polluted city in the world.
When your parents and grandparents, did they notice this change and describe it to you, talk about it with you?
Yes, oh, each and every day, constantly. And it's what I grew up with, and therefore I studied science, and therefore I'm engaged in climate change as well.
My colleague, Mr. Power, reminds me of an important question. Since you know this world well, would you say that the CEO of Exxon makes some years $35 million? Is that more or less than the average reindeer herder in the Sami culture makes?
Whatever reindeer herding generates, it cannot be measured in money.
There was one story by Ken Henshaw from Nigeria which stood out to us the most.
Nigeria is a country rich in oil.
Yes.
Has that made it a country rich and prosperous for all its citizens?
Absolutely not.
Can you explain how that's possible?
Well, Nigeria used to be, until recently, it was something close to the 6th largest exporter of crude oil in the world. And the only people who have made wealth, who have become prosperous due to Nigeria's oil industry, have been a clique of politicians and oil companies.
Surely that can't be true. I'm looking at the Exxon Mobil Nigeria homepage right now, and they say, we believe maximizing energy resources goes beyond energy production. Developing human capital through education builds a foundation that transforms the future. In your experience, has that been Exxon's work in Nigeria?
Absolutely untrue. I'm sure that the majority of people who live in the Niger Delta in Nigeria have never read that thing they have up there. They will probably pull down the website. Nigeria is now called a terrorist country due to the Boko Haram insurgency. Now, Boko Haram exists in a region in Nigeria that is not known for fundamentalism in the least. But that region also happens to be around the area bordering the Lake Chad. The Lake Chad in the last 30 years has shrunk to a 20th of its size. That lake used to be the source of irrigation for the entire region. That lake used to be where livestock drink. That lake used to support farming. That lake was the hub of fishing in the entire region. As the Lake Chad shrunk, people became desperate. People became destitute. People became criminalized. Insurgency rose, fundamentalism rose because it was easy to recruit. So yes, we trace directly the rise of Boko Haram to factors related to climate change. There used to be a monthly data released by the petroleum industry in Nigeria, rating companies in terms of their levels of gas flaring. Exxon constantly tops that chart. So rather than do something about the changing climatic conditions, they are instead flaring gas. As I speak to you, gas flaring is going on unperturbed, undisturbed as we speak right now. It's most likely going to continue because these companies remain in denial.
Thank you very, very much for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Excuse me, one follow-up.
Thank you. So Rex Tillerson, the CEO, in 2012 said that humans have always adapted, will adapt. One of the ways that humans adapt is by moving, by migrating. Based on what you're seeing of the treatment of refugees in Europe and North America, do you believe that if Africans are forced to migrate because of climate change, that they will be welcomed?
It doesn't feel so, no. To me right now, it does not feel so. It doesn't feel so at all. I don't get the impression that if, for any reason, people in the Niger Delta in Nigeria who are affected by climate change had to move, they'll be welcome. Here in Europe, no, I don't think so.
What do you feel when you hear those words from Exxon's CEO?
I really feel bad because it seems to me that they don't take into consideration what people are passing through, and the revelations are becoming more and more dire. I can tell you about a community called Bodo in Ogoniland. It is the place where UNEP carried out an assessment of the environment, and it was confirmed that benzene, I'd never heard the word benzene before now, that benzene, a cancer-causing agent, is in the water people drink 900 times higher than it should be. People still drink that water now. It is the water I learned how to swim in. It is the water I drink till now. Life expectancy in the Niger Delta has drastically, dropped. The expectancy level is something between 43 and 46 years old in Niger Delta. If you drive into Bodo every weekend, the pastime there now are burials. What you see on each and every wall are posters announcing this burial or that burial or this burial. And every poster has got the age of the person, the deceased. It's hardly up to 50 years old. I am really, really scared because I still drink that water. On the 1st of August, I was 39 years old. If life expectancy is between 43 and 46, I'm afraid. I'm really getting scared.
Thank you for your testimony.
Wow, that was quite an experience.
Yeah, it was. And it's amazing that organizations like 350.org were able to put on such a powerful people's tribunal. Now, we do want to say, in fairness, that ExxonMobil is not the only company that has led to climate change, of course, but it is one of the companies that had advanced knowledge of some of the consequences of its own products and could have allowed us to address this decades ago.
Yeah, and although this whole event may not necessarily be legally binding because it didn't happen in a real courtroom with real judges, it does still speak to the opinions of real people. And it also facilitates the efforts that might want to be made to actually bring ExxonMobil to the court. What with there being a real list of witnesses and evidence to actually take a case forward, and whether or not justice will be served in the court of law.
We the people had the power to phase them out.
'Cause that's the only way.